First report of the private starship Pastrami. We should reach the moon in approximately 3 days, assuming it's still where we left it. It has been days since we last heard word from the cleanup crew. With a little luck, some part of the old laboratory will be operational and all of the mutinous robot horde will have been deactivated. This is vaguely scientific. I am Derek, one of your hosts and navigator for our space trip, and joining me, as always, my co-host, Jim, the Starship Pilot. Hi, Jim.
It's flying.
Yay. It's kind of more drifting at this point.
Oh, no, it's like at full thrust. We're going like 4 Gs of acceleration here.
Oh, wow, you can't even tell.
Yeah, it's weird, because you should be being crushed into your seat pretty hard.
Yes, and. And our guest this week was in charge of travel snacks. Please welcome back Justin.
Hello.
Hello. Did you bring lobster chips?
Who are you?
That's my favorite travel snack. Lobster chips.
We're recording this the week that Desert Bus is going on, and one of the recurring things that has happened is that the one guy was in Japan like 2 weeks ago and brought back this giant duffel bag full of snacks, and one of them is scallop flavored Pringles.
I've had those.
Apparently, everyone loves them.
Joe would bring them back whenever he and Mickey would come back from Japan.
Oh, cool.
I think he brought those back, or he brought back those, or like shrimp flavored chips or something. Like he brought back
shrimp chips are good.
Definitely some like seafood that was also a chip, and then he brings back every flavor of Kit Kat he can find.
Wow.
Well, that's just a good choice.
It's a good friend. Yeah. Joe does listen to the podcast, so hey Joe, and thank you.
Kit Kats are my favorite candy, in case you're curious.
Ooh.
Well, this is a show where we answer the most ridiculous audience-submitted questions in a manner that we like to call vaguely scientific, eventually when we get to them.
Yeah, someday.
But before we do that, it's time for Jim's fun science fact of the day. Jim?
Yeah, I found this really interesting. I don't even know where I read it, but apparently bloodhounds have such a good sense of smell that their tracking and locating abilities are admissible as evidence in U.S. courts.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I find that fascinating. Like, man, good job, bloodhounds.
I was gonna say, a family friend of ours, they didn't have a bloodhound. They had a black and tan, which like are still like pretty impressive, like snoots, right? Pretty impressive noses on those.
Mm-hmm.
And for their Oktoberfest, we'd go to their house and they'd throw like a big party and stuff. And at night, they would put one of those glow sticks, like the glow stick necklaces, around the dog's collar, like around their neck where the collar was. And they would throw stuff into the yard that was dark, and you could hounds don't really use their eyes as much as they use their noses to like track stuff.
Right.
And you could watch him. She'd go over the hill. Ellie would go down the hill, and then you would watch this light that was around her neck just go back and forth in a zigzag pattern until she found the thing that you threw. Then she'd run back up the hill. You'd throw it to a completely different part of the yard, and she would just sit there and pace back and forth in the yard until she picked up the scent, and then she'd grab it and bring it back, like in complete darkness. It was so cool.
Huh.
That's cool.
And she wasn't even a bloodhound.
Wild.
So,
So imagine what a bloodhound could do.
Yeah.
I learned recently that wolves don't actually have a very good sense of smell, apparently.
Really?
And because everybody assumes that they would because they're dogs. And so that's kind of neat. That is a bred trait.
That is really interesting.
that kind of makes sense though, right? Because like work dogs are bred, right? You know, like wild dogs weren't really work dogs.
And they're not really trackers, they're pack hunters.
Right. So like a working dog would have to be bred into existence, and then whatever trait seemed to work the best to like track and hunt things, I guess, would be smell. So
yeah.
Well, With that out of the way, perhaps we should move on to our first question this week.
Okay.
And question 1 this week comes to us from Christy. What new elemental deities might now claim dominion over different parts of our modern society? And I wanted to mention that this question was sent along with a screenshot of some kind of text discourse.
It is a Tumblr post.
It's a Tumblr post. You see how in touch with things I am.
With today's youth.
With today's youth. With kids these days, and they're tumbling and they're twitting.
Their twitting might be not so much anymore.
Yeah, by the time this episode comes out, Twitter may be no more.
Twitter might have been running to the ground.
Yeah, we're recording this like 2 months in advance, so.
I thought Tumblr was no more when I started doing the old man voice, so. I don't even know.
Who knows what's going to happen in 2 months? I don't know.
I have a guess.
Oh boy. Well, so this Tumblr post, it starts out by saying, here's an idea for a new goddess idea. She's an earth goddess of the new age whose domain is spinning and weaving, but specifically spinning and weaving gigantic structural steel cables for construction and other industrial purposes. Her skin is steel gray and hard to the touch, and her hair is like long dreadlocks of woven steel. She laughs at bad architecture. I'm censoring this. She laughs at bad architecture designs that will fall apart if actually built, and protects well-made bridges and buildings she likes. She might warn you of unforeseen dangers if you always wear your proper PPE. And then they ask for a name for this character, and somebody says, obviously the name is Osha.
I love that so much.
Which is a great name, yes.
Yeah.
Except that when I first read that, I was like, oh, so it's Mothman. But then,
yeah.
So it's Mothman about bridges specifically, yeah.
Yeah.
So that post could probably be in the show notes, but I read it anyway.
It's a really interesting question, though.
Yeah, so who wants to hit the ground running on this one, I guess?
Well, so I have one. I didn't come up with this, but it's something that I always come back to because I think it's fascinating, and it's something that perhaps someday we may have to consider as like as technology improves and AI improves and things like that. I think I've mentioned on the show before. There's an audio drama that I used to listen to called Tales from the Afternow. And one of the sort of recurring things that is mentioned in Afternow is that there is a supposed entity called Server. And Server is like they treat Server as a god, but it is sort of like the internet had eventually become sentient and is sort of like able to do things in like interact with the real world, I guess, sort of through the Internet of Things that we have in our world now. You know, we can wire up our light bulbs in our fridges and whatnot and play Pokemon Shuffle on the refrigerator. But I thought the idea of Server was just really fascinating because as the internet becomes more and more complex and AIs start to run more and more facets of it, in the future, maybe there will be sort of a sentience to this internet. And, you know, in my head, when I think of Server from Afternow, I always sort of think of like the blue wireframe looking person from the Exploding Brain meme. That's what I always think of. But that was the first thing I thought of with this question. It's like, oh, Server from Afternow. I remember this.
I thought of, I feel like the internet is such a integral part to civilization now that I was just like, well, there's a god of the internet, and I decided it was Neo. But I like yours too. So
those both remind me of Skynet.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Terminator,
yeah.
right? Like, yeah.
Oh, and that's interesting because both Neo and then like also John Connor are like Messiah analogs.
Oh,
so
yeah, they're messianic figures. It's cool.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Afternow, the main character eventually becomes sort of a Messiah figure, and to some people, he's been trying to go around and like improve the conditions of the world, and people sort of start treating him as sort of a mythological figure, even though he really isn't, which I think is kind of neat.
Interesting. I'm not as familiar with this, but I know you've mentioned it a few times.
Yeah, that series ended too soon. It had 2 seasons, and they always sort of teased a third, but this was like 20 years ago, so that's not happening. It was very good though. If Sean Kennedy's out there listening to our podcast inexplicably, good job. I love it. I'm still talking about it.
Also, come be a guest on the show.
Yeah.
all you got to do, Jim, is pray to the god of dead shows.
Yeah.
And have them bring it back.
Yeah.
I don't like that one. That one makes me mad all the time. Because I want Pushing Daisies to come back.
I mean, to be fair, that god has made some very good choices in retrospect, right?
Yes.
Because we could have given Joss Whedon more work if we got more Firefly, and he could have had more chances to be a jerk.
Yeah.
But
well, and the other thing is like when you see like most shows that get reboots are not great. Like they're not necessarily bad, but there's always like that one thing that's missing, you know?
Oh, right. I mean, that's because hype is always going to kill whatever. Good. I mean, that's why specifically dead shows. I'm not saying bring these shows back. I'm saying I'm mad that the shows died. So that if there's a god of dead shows, then we have a beef.
Mm-hmm.
The god of dead shows is kind of like, I was just thinking, what would the modern day version of a psychopomp be? It's the god of dead shows.
I hate you. I hate you as a person.
That is the psychopomp of the 21st century, is something that kills TV shows, movies, production value for entertainment.
I thought that was just Disney Plus.
He works for Disney, clearly.
He works for Disney for sure. Can I derail a little bit? So I wanted to talk about something that isn't exactly taking the question in the spirit I think it was asked, but like I thought of some interesting stuff to explore. And so the first thing I wanted to say is like, I don't want to speak on any actual religious beliefs that people have, because this is largely a silly conversation. But I do think that it's worth exploring the difference between what I think what we're doing is talking about building maybe a pantheon in like a fantasy setting.
Oh, yeah.
But I thought of a couple different ways that you could interpret this conversation. And so I wanted to start with like defining the word deity. Because in essence, a deity is just a thing that people worship. And different cultures define that like vastly differently.
Yeah.
There's like this modern perception where like there's a god of fire and there's a god of water. And so like if you look at Greek mythology, like Zeus has lightning powers and Poseidon has water powers. And those are like how a lot of people kind of interpret those. But like Norse mythology more so, like even though the Norse gods have their domains, they don't really have like specific powers to go along with that.
Their powers are tied to places or objects for the most part.
Yeah. And so it's like we have a tendency to view these mythological gods as like superheroes. Which
Stan Lee did.
I mean Stan Lee did and Jack Kirby, of course.
Right.
But there's a comic, a DC comic called Kingdom Come that came out a very long time ago that imagines a futuristic society of the DC universe where the Justice League have actually ascended to godhood. And so that's kind of interesting. But I guess this is a very long-winded thing. I apologize. I wanted to kind of look at, there's a difference between God with a capital G and like Greek gods and Norse gods and stuff. And our culture, like English culture and American culture, has a lot of influence from like Abrahamic religions that sort of translate the word God as a proper noun to this all-powerful being. And therefore, whenever we talk about like Zeus and Hades and Poseidon, we think that's what God means. So these characters are also all-powerful. But in a lot of polytheist religions, that's not really the case. They're like usually more powerful than humanity, but they can be like outsmarted by people, and they have limits, and they're sometimes debatably immortal, I guess. And so I'm getting to my point, I promise. A lot of times the word God in different cultures can refer to something that is supernatural, but not specifically an all-powerful thing. Like a lot of Celtic deities, which we might refer to as like elves or fairies, or even in Islam, the jinn or demons, or some angels in Judeo-Christian mythology are referred to as Elohim, which just kind of means spiritual being, but it's also the word that refers to Allah or Yahweh. So this is a very long-winded way of me saying that modern deities could maybe be characters from folklore and like fairy creatures and stuff like that.
So all of that made me think of, and this I guess doesn't necessarily have to be like a modern thing, but I if there was like a god in charge of like gambling, if that makes it like a specific deity that one would pray to, that is like, hey, I want to get 21 on my blackjack draw, or I want to get a 7 on my craps roll, or something like that.
Lady Luck.
Yeah, I think they would look a lot like Balan from Balan Wonderworld.
Oh, I actually know what that is.
I do not.
I was just about to go to Google, and I was like, wait, I know what that is.
So Balan he's wearing like an all white suit and like has a hat that is pulled down over his eyes. I'm just gonna put a picture in the Discord, but
okay,
but I'll put it in the show notes too. So let's see,
because I know like there are gods of luck and like god like
sure,
like good fortune, right? Like so like Ganesh in Hinduism is like a god of luck and good fortune, among like a bunch of other different things.
Sure.
But yeah, gambling. Look at that. He is a top hat.
Yeah.
He is a top hat, yeah.
The game is not great. It's not even good.
I've heard the game's bad, but I do like the design.
I super love his character design. The game is apparently like a step below mediocre.
I feel like he has to be like he has a rough Cajun accent. if he's the god of gambling, he has to have a rough Cajun accent, right?
Yeah.
Oh, now I'm getting flashbacks to the Princess and the Frog Disney movie.
Oh, I forget that character's name, but the voodoo guy.
Yeah.
That guy's based on. I wasn't gonna say this because when we're recording this, we're approaching the December. And so I did think about this, but I decided this episode comes out in January, so there's no reason to bring it up. But I talk a lot about like Santa Claus and how Santa Claus has all these different origins that have over the centuries meshed together.
Yeah.
So like you can trace back to like Saint Nicholas, but like that's only part of what we now think of as Santa Claus. And a lot of people like to point out that there's a lot of influence from Odin in that.
Right.
And so like, I guess getting back onto this question, like what deities in like this fantasy world that we're creating might be the new deities of the new world, like maybe they'd be adapted like old deities that have adapted to fit the modern setting.
I see. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Boy, I mean, that's actually why maybe we could even circle back to the luck deity, because I mean, yeah, there have been luck deities forever, but maybe this is like an offshoot of that, where specifically for like gamblers.
Wouldn't that would be Yu-Gi-Oh, the king of games, I think. Would be
the
god of gamblers.
I mean,
I guess deities don't have to be good, right?
True.
Deities don't have to be good. I mean,
there's a shadow realm.
Yeah, I mean, the term is nebulous. Like, technically, it's a thing that a culture worships, but we're talking about now mythological, legendary figures, I think.
Jim would agree with me. There's definitely some sort of mythological being that has cursed Bob. Our buddy Bob, who every time we play board games gets himself in the worst position possible,
Yeah.
and it's almost never his fault.
Right. It's Balan, I'm telling you.
Yeah, well, like
He's escaped the Wonder World.
he'll roll a die and like move somewhere and get stuck in a room or something like in Betrayal, and then just spend the rest of the game there because he can't get out because his rolls are terrible.
Like one of those rooms where it's like, oh, you have to roll this amount of speed to leave the room, and he'll just roll zeros on all of his dice for forever.
And he just can't. Yeah, it's you know, whatever the trickster god of board games is, he's following Bob. So
yeah. Well, that's one of them. So one that I thought of was born in I don't have a date for this. Maybe the 20s. Whenever the Model A came out, or the Model T, or whatever the first car was. Basically this figure that is a mechanic, and with the Industrial Revolution, has kind of existed as like a train, and then has like grown and been able to leave the track, and is now kind of like has gotten over the years, started as like a very old kind of like lots of arthritic kind of movement, struggling to like run on burning coal, and over the years has gotten younger and more sleek and more able. So it's the god of like basically automotive vehicles.
I see. Yeah. Actually, in a very similar vein, I was thinking that there would be like a god of internal combustion, in the sense of like, you know how a lot of people are like especially people who have older cars are like, come on, start up, and you turn the key and it's yeah. And that's sort of like the mantra or the prayer that they say to invoke this god to make their car actually begin.
Come on. Come on.
The Allspark. We're praying to the Allspark.
The Allspark.
Yeah.
That makes me think of a god that like his domain would be like tobacco, right? And
gross.
but you would get that evolution, right? Of like you know, the god is domain is first like sort of like friendship or bonding or like community, right? And then as society progresses and different civilizations sort of like tear each other apart, it becomes more and more about like self-centeredness over time.
Yeah.
Right. And then after the evolution of self-centeredness, it becomes about profit. Right. And now what we have is like, we've now transitioned from this god of like profit to like making people look cool or whatever to now it's the god of vapes. It's the god of vapes.
Definitely.
Oh no.
Has just fallen off of their pedestal.
I don't know why I thought this was going to end with the Ferengi, but that's much better or worse. I don't know. So one other idea I had for like a modern world, and this is sort of tying back into the idea that there were like, because basically what I was thinking of is like the idea of like a god of small electronic devices. So like in specific, I don't know, there was a joke that I thought was very funny from the Magic Tavern, where the premise of that show is that this guy falls into a D&D world and is making a podcast about the things he encounters. But there was a plot hole because he's making this podcast with his laptop, and the plot hole was, well, how's he charging his laptop? And it was that the wizard was casting a spell called Tiny Lightning to charge it up. And I was like,
That's right.
Maybe there's a god of like small electrical charges and like circuit boards that make the circuit boards have the electricity. So it'd be like a tiny Thor.
It's like one of Thor's kids, like great grandchildren.
Yeah,
just like,
yeah.
As soon as we started learning how to harness electricity, like we basically took the power. Oh, that's what I was gonna say. In Greek mythology, there's the story of Prometheus stealing fire and giving it to mankind, and that's the beginning of humanity rising above the Olympian pantheon.
I have two that I have not talked about. because I think I've just kind of riffed off of everything that you guys have said for the last hour.
That's fair. That's fair.
So I had one that I thought would be a good like messenger god, right? The domain of glass and light, right? And it's the god of high speed connectedness, right? Like the god of the internets and like fiber optic cables. Yeah. Like the god of fiber, like a Hermes style god, but instead of like, you know, being a messenger god and like flying around and stuff, they are in charge of fiber optic cable and being able to send messages sort of at the speed of light to people all across the globe, right?
Man, Hermes would be a good name for like an internet provider.
It would, yeah.
Yes, correct. Actually, that's kind of neat because then you could build I think you could build a pantheon. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I keep wanting to say Parthenon, and I'm like, that's not it.
That's a building.
Well, you need a Parthenon for the Pantheon.
Right.
Correct.
I think you could build a Pantheon around the internet. So you have like you have server, you have like your Hermes fiber optic cable god, and you have like the god of circuit boards and tiny electricity and things like that. I think it would be really interesting to see what people could come up with, like developing this fiction around, well, fiction's a bad word for it, but this mythology around the internet, because the internet is such a like, I don't know how you would explain the internet to someone who's never seen the internet before. Like, I don't know how you'd go back in time 50 years and try to explain it to someone. Like, I feel like people have a hard time wrapping their head around it now. Like, the internet's not just like a database. It is like a living creature where people add to it nonstop from all over the world. It has fundamentally changed how the world works. And I think that's just a really neat way to like define aspects of it, is by deifying them.
Jim, you should read Snow Crash.
I've been told that, yeah.
What is the trickster god of the internet?
Oh, there's a few.
Is it bandwidth?
Because like I was thinking...
It has to be some kind of troll, but what would you name it?
Well, I was thinking like computer viruses. There would have to be
some
like that. And then is dial-up like a Titan that like was overthrown?
Ooh, AOL was a Titan that was overthrown.
Yeah. Because dial-up, who was married to the landline.
The telephone deity.
And they both had a baby who was, what was that one from the beginning, Jim, that you had?
I said AOL.
Server.
Server, yeah.
Server's their child, right?
Server's the child.
Yes.
Dial up and
and he rips out dial-up's good eye.
Justin, did you say you had another one?
I did. This one is extremely, because like we have been focusing a lot on like technology, right? I think that I think considering who we're talking to, I think that makes a lot of sense. But I had this thought the other day, post COVID, right? Or not like post, like this after effect of like the worst of what we saw in 2020 and 2021. I feel like we've had a resurgence in general of people wanting to go out and do things and not be kind of like stuck at a job and not be like, you know, like people are like, I want to go out and like we had 2 years where we couldn't do anything. I don't like, I want to go out and do stuff now. Like, I don't want to be stuck here. I want to go out there and be. So I was thinking like this is sort of like a spirit god that's been around, but is seeing like a resurgence, right? Like you see a resurgence every couple of years whenever humans become like crave knowledge or experience, right?
Oh, okay.
And I was thinking about it as like the spirit of adventure, right?
And I like that.
So like the spirit of adventure, we're kind of seeing a resurgence of it now, where people are like, you know, I want to go out, we want to go out with our friends more because we didn't get to do it for a while. But like, we just want to travel more. We want to go see different countries. We want to go see different places. Like, and people seem to be more so than they used to be, like kind of not just thinking about going places, but making it happen, right? Which is, I think, the entire backbone of that, right? The spirit of adventure makes you want to get up and go do things, and like get up and not just think about being on an adventure, but like go on one yourself and stuff like that. And I think that that's happening, and I think that would be like a cool way to think about it.
I think that's such a neat idea.
Yeah.
Huh. Well, I think we leave it off there. I
Yeah.
like that.
I think we should ask the listeners to tell us what their ideas of deities are.
I mean, add to our modern pantheon of folkloric spiritual beings, I think.
Yeah. So we have Jim's server and tiny lightning god.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Server that I stole from Tales from the Afternow.
and we have our psychopomp, which is Derek's least favorite thing we've talked about today. Dead TV and media.
Yeah.
And we have fiber optic cables. What else do we do? I feel like there's at least one more.
I said something about like cars.
Yeah, like vehicle travel.
Yeah.
Vehicle stuff.
Oh, I mean that's going in that direction, right? Electric cars are happening, so
yeah,
very sleek.
Spirit of Adventure is by far my favorite one.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
We need more trickster gods. Give us more trickster gods.
Yes.
We need more tricksters gods. We need.
There's got to be an internet trickster god.
We need like heroes that are
what?
emblematic of these creatures.
We need demigods.
Yeah. I was just thinking of a lot of the like Slender Man. These are I'm pivoting hard into more things that are like demonic in nature. But there's Slender Man, which is of course very, very famous online. There's one that I've heard of recently. I don't know much about it, called Siren Head, which is it's a wild thing that's like a living tree with a couple sirens on its like loudspeaker looking sirens on its head. I don't know almost anything about it, but I presume it's supposed to be creepy, which it actually is pretty creepy if you look up pictures of it. But stuff like that, like the weird modern versions of things like fae folk and like Slender Man is definitely like a fae folk, like steals people, like kidnaps children kind of dealio, but dressed in a nice modern suit.
He's like a red cap, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean the girl from The Ring and Mothman absolutely fit this theme in my mind.
Oh yeah.
I love how we decided at the midnight hour to delve back into cryptozoology for a little bit. Like,
I mean,
internet mythology.
Fits.
Yeah. This is internet mythology in a very different way, right? Like this is like cultural internet mythology.
Yeah. One of the things that I always find interesting is when people talk about what are called tulpas, which is the idea that if you like think about something or believe something hard enough that it can manifest. And I think that's sort of in line with this, where you have like these, like, I think cryptozoology is a really good example of this, because, you have like all these people looking for Bigfoot. Of course, they're going to find Bigfoot because, they're looking for it so hard that anything at that point could be Bigfoot. But I think it's interesting.
Oh, the very first thing you said was AI was an AI character that had ascended. Mm-hmm. And I immediately thought, it was very interesting how probably a lot of the things we've talked about are man-made things that exist because humanity created the need for them, I guess, or the place for that. We created the domain for them.
Yeah. The god of the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah. So we really ought to move on.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Listeners, let us know what you think about this. I can almost guarantee that a lot of our conversation was cut for time.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to say. In the meantime, though, we do have a second question this episode. And that question is, how would a museum go round work? And would it make everyone inside motion sick? And I think for our younger listeners, it's worth saying the museum go-round is a famous concept from the neighborhood of make-believe in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. One of the characters, Lady Elaine Fairchild, what owns and operates the museum go round. I'm not really sure what the lore on that is.
That's it.
She lives in it. That's
Yeah.
what I knew. That's
Interestingly
where she lives.
enough, I forget if it's 1 or 2 seasons. I think it's 2 seasons. But in the first 2 seasons of the show, Lady Elaine didn't live in the museum go round. It was run by a family of frogs called the Frogs. And then they move out, and then Lady Elaine takes over. And no one's ever really seen the first 2 seasons of Mr. Rogers, so it's kind of irrelevant.
I did not know that. So yeah.
I don't know which one I dislike more. Lady Elaine, because she's terrifying, or a bunch of frogs who run a museum.
I will go on record, because I have seen some of the early Mr. Rogers episodes, because they do the Twitch streams every once in a while. I will say the frog family is substantially more creepy looking to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Lady Elaine is also a trickster god in a lot of ways.
She's
Yeah. This is really important, Jim. Think about this carefully.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
How were the frogs shaped?
Badly. Yeah.
They were puppet.
They were puppet frogs, to be fair.
To be fair, no frog is goodly shaped. They are all badly shaped. So
there's where you're wrong.
Yeah.
There are badly shaped frogs, but there are also many goodly shaped frogs.
I have a t-shirt that says otherwise.
Well, you know.
You bought me a t-shirt that says otherwise. So
when in Rome.
That one's mirrored. That's why. Yeah. So it is a museum that it goes round.
Yeah.
And that's how it works.
Yeah. And it is literally a museum. Like, we see characters inside it all the time, and there's like displays and stuff. And
that's what I was going to ask. I was pretty sure that we did, but I couldn't find a clear example of it. I know that we've gone inside rooms in the castle.
Yeah.
And we've gone inside the schoolhouse.
It's fascinating to me, because at various points throughout the entire series, we've seen the insides of, I think, all of the buildings in the neighborhood.
Okay.
And they are substantially bigger on the inside.
That was a note. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, there's like some serious Time Lord technology stuff going on here.
Mr. Rogers was a Time Lord.
Well, so are we to imagine, because my answer to this is no, but are we to imagine that the puppet characters are the same size? Like, they're just is that part of the make-believe, or are we supposed to keep in mind that they are smaller?
I think we're supposed to keep in mind they're smaller, because all of them have been carried at some point. Like, even Lady Elaine has been carried around the neighborhood by people. And I think that they don't acknowledge that they are like literally puppets, but I think that the implication is that it is supposed to be clear to you, the viewer, that they're not like regular human folks.
They're not real people.
Yeah. And that's part of the thing with Mr. Rogers, and this is something that they talked about when they had Big Bird on. Mr. Rogers wanted to have Big Bird come into the real world and take off his head and show that it's what was the name of the person? Carol something? The actor who played Big Bird, whoever that was, he wanted to show, there's a person in the suit. And
Carol Spinney.
I don't know exactly what the conversation was, but they said, no, we can't do that. And so Big Bird does show up in the neighborhood of make-believe as a make-believe character. And that was always a big part of, like, between the real world and the make-believe world. They wanted to differentiate. And it's weird because in early seasons, they very much do not do that. And that's kind of the wild thing.
I believe I just watched an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood where they visited the set of the Bill Bixby Hulk show.
Oh, yeah.
And we got to see Lou Ferrigno like put on his makeup and stuff. And then there was famously he had the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah.
I do know that the Big Bird thing was the Jim Henson Company was overly protective of the Muppet IPs. That's why they couldn't do it. Because Carol Spinney had since demonstrated that, like in years to follow.
Some sports teams, they have like built into their contracts, you're not allowed to see the person in the mascot suit. And some sports teams, it's like, yeah, we'll interview, we'll work with you. We'll set up a time where you could see how the costume works and things like that. So it's kind of interesting, like that kind of stuff behind the scenes.
The Disney World and Disneyland actors are similar.
100% what I was thinking too, Derek. Yeah. That's exactly what popped in my head was like, it's the Disney, like, it's so funny. Mr. Rogers is like the antithesis of the Disney, thing where he wants kids to know what's real and what's make-believe. And
Yeah.
Disney is the exact opposite, where they're like, you cannot let children know that these are not real characters.
Right.
So the difference between like the Disney mentality versus like Big Bird, it was they were worried that kids were going to be afraid that someone had killed Big Bird. Like that's
that
the
shouldn't
difference.
be funny, but it kind of is.
I mean, it's a little funny, but like that's a legitimate fear. Like kids ripping off the mall Santa, the fake Santa's beard, and
Right.
seeing and then crying like that. You don't want that to be associated with your children's entertainment brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But actually, so back to the museum go round. It's funny because I said this as a joke, and now I'm like, in Doctor Who, we see the TARDIS spinning around like a top constantly, but the inside is like stationary. So if it is Time Lord technology,
it's in a gyroscope. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say, which is a very boring and like non-answer almost, but it's just the outside spins and the inside is stationary, so it looks cool.
Yeah, but there's so the thing that I looked up, and I didn't really find a whole lot super interesting to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I looked up the Space Needle.
Oh, okay.
In Seattle.
Yeah.
And so they have a rotating observatory.
Right.
And I was reading that in 2018 they installed a glass floor. So you can look down, which
I hate that.
Why? Right? But so like if you go into this and you can view not only like straight down, but you can also see like the gears and the
that's kind of neat
mechanism. Yeah, so that sounds really cool. And I looked up I couldn't find like an exact rotation speed, but it did say, I guess you could do math to figure this out, but it's adjustable and it can go from anywhere to one revolution can take 20 minutes or it can take 90 minutes. So those are the high and low end of how fast it can go.
I see.
And like people in that don't get like motion sick.
Yeah.
As far as I know.
When we were on our honeymoon, we went up to Niagara Falls and they have this revolving restaurant called the Skylon Tower. And I was reading about that, and I sort of then ended up reading a bunch about revolving restaurants, of which there are numerous revolving restaurants in the world. And I guess depending on the restaurant, they can revolve anywhere between 1 and 3 revolutions per hour. So,
okay.
But of course, in the show, we see the museum go around like flying. It really takes off. But
another thing that I made note of, in the show, Lady Elaine is able to make the museum go around teleport.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the building function or if it's her being magic.
It's her being magic, because I remember the exact circumstance of this is that she has a thing called the boomerang, toomerang, sumerang, and it's a magical boomerang. And she is very mad at King Friday because Prince Tuesday got hurt playing, and so King Friday banned playing and fun in the neighborhood, and she's like, well, I'm leaving then, goodbye. And she teleports to a park.
I remember that episode. I don't know why, like, I have no idea why, because I don't remember, like, any episodes of Mr. Rogers. But I do very distinctly remember him banning playing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And her getting very mad about
fun.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. There aren't too many episodes I specifically remember from when I was a kid. Like, I've seen a lot of them over the years because I like the show a lot, and I like to go back to it just as like a comfort thing.
I watched it a lot in college.
But I remember that one specifically when I was a child. And
okay.
Like during COVID, didn't PBS like start at the beginning and just play like back to back? All of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for like
they've done a couple
month.
of those on Twitch, yeah.
That's
why I've seen some of the really early, really weird episodes.
Yeah.
My favorite of the neighborhood neighbors was X the Owl.
Me too.
X the Owl was the man.
Although as an adult now, Lady Elaine has become my favorite because she's just chaotic in every way.
I used to be afraid of Lady Elaine.
I was
remember when
I was
a
never.
kid.
She was actually up there on my list when I was a kid too, because every time she was involved, things would go sideways in a really fun way, and
Yeah.
I just got a kick out of that because like she was this anti-authority, like didn't care what the king said or did. She was like, I'm gonna do my own thing, you know. Good chaotic energy.
I like the puckish kind of
Yeah,
mentality of her now. I just remember I didn't like her when I was a kid because
Yeah.
she scared me.
she got a weird nose.
She got a weird nose. And then King Friday, my opinion of King Friday has not changed. I don't want to say what it is, but it's the same as what it was.
Yeah.
I always thought he was a buzzkill.
I mean, he is. And he's also very full of himself. As a child, I was like, the figure of authority. He learns his lesson and does good things. And now as an adult, I'm like, he's kind of an idiot.
He's kind of an idiot.
Yeah.
And
So I was thinking we already have this technology technically, right? I mean, not the magic part. It depends on who you are, I guess. But Disney has already kind of made this a thing, right? With the Carousel of Progress.
I don't know what that is.
The Carousel of Progress is like a ride at Disney that goes around, that you sit in like a seat and you go around in a circle, and it shows you sort of like the nuclear family home over the course of like generations, right? Over the course of different years.
Interesting.
It's a ride that kids absolutely despise because it's pretty boring if you're
because it's educational.
Yeah. But like the whole point is that like I'm like 90% sure the Carousel of Progress, like Jim kind of hit the nail on the head at the beginning, right? The middle is stationary, and you as the viewer ride around to different sections, and then it talks about like in the 1950s people watched TVs this way, and people played games in their living rooms, and it's been a minute since I've been in the Carousel of Progress, but yeah, and they update the very last scene every couple years, if I remember correctly. But yeah, like it's basically like a merry-go-round that you watch people talk about
social studies.
Yeah, basically. And I was like, that's basically like we're halfway there, right? You move to a certain section, maybe you get up and you walk around a bit. I would suggest that maybe the carousel, like the museum go round, is multi-leveled, right? And maybe you go up and down maybe it's on a corkscrew, and you go up and down the corkscrew. I'm sorry, I'm just throwing out. This is what the seats in the Carousel of Progress look like.
Oh, okay. Okay, it kind of reminds me of a planetarium.
Yeah, a little bit. It literally like moves you around in these different areas. But what if that's what the museum go round is? But it's almost like 7 or 8 stories below ground, and you sit and it goes around and you corkscrew down to a level or up to a level, and then you can walk around a little bit in the middle, and then you get back on and you corkscrew.
Well, yeah.
Wherever
if you go under street level, they can be as big as you want them to be.
Yeah.
They're all underground.
Hey, you know who has a bunch of underground stuff? Bunch of secret underground stuff? Disney. They know how to do it.
I mean, yeah. I mean, Disney himself is under there.
Frozen.
Yeah. I think the other thing that we have to take into consideration is that it is imaginary, so it can do whatever it wants to do.
I didn't want to be the one that said that, because I feel like I'm always the one who says that.
Oh yeah.
Like,
these
are made up, and you can do whatever you want.
Well, the thing is, and we talked about this already, is that it is important that was an important thing that Mr. Rogers always wanted to hammer home, was that it is imaginary, and that's true. So we can do whatever we want in this world. It is our sandbox, and there's many things in it that we all know as, real human beings that we can't do that, but it's all pretend, so it's all good.
Which is why he wanted to dethrone Big Bird.
Yeah.
He wanted
to put an end to Big Bird.
To put an end to Big Bird in front of a bunch of children.
At the risk of being on here for another hour, I'm going to go there. That's why whenever people say spoiling the magic trick ruins it, I disagree. Like, seeing how the trick is done gives you the tools to make the magic yourself. And that's
exactly what Jim Henson didn't want.
That's what Jim Henson needed to keep the trick. It was his estate at that point.
Yeah, I know.
I don't think he had died.
It just because you know it's not real doesn't make it any less. What is that? There's that quote in Harry Potter at the end.
I don't know.
When, spoilers, Harry's dead for a hot second, and then he comes back.
But that was Jon Snow.
Probably. I never finished Game of Thrones, but that sounds about right. He looks at basically Ghost Dumbledore, and he goes, this whole conversation isn't real, is it? It happened in my head. And Dumbledore looks at him and goes, of course it happened in your head, but that doesn't make it any less real.
Right.
And I was like, that's so good. It's a very good moment, because just because something's fake doesn't mean it's bad or not real. There's no truth to it. It's just not exactly what you thought it was.
Yeah. And if we knew everything, then we wouldn't have anything to talk about.
Yeah.
Do you see, Derek, how I masterfully did not dive into an hour and a half long conversation about magic after you brought that up?
That's because I prefaced it by saying, let's not.
I did that for you.
I appreciate it.
I think that was a good small one.
Yeah.
Relatively speaking.
Because the first one was huge.
I think we made the right call on that.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, let us know. Is Lady Elaine the new deity for the modern world?
Yes.
That seems to be...
Give me all of your power.
I forgot that Jim sounds like Lady Elaine.
Yeah. Lady Elaine is now your god.
Yes, give me all of your power. I bask in your worship.
Is that where she keeps her power in the museum go-round?
Well, she's got the magic boomerang, so it could be either that or...
I think she's got a few things.
She does, you're right. Yeah.
What do we have to either steal or destroy to take her power?
The puppet.
Yeah.
The puppet. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
The puppet.
We have to kill her like we killed Big Bird.
And dethrone Carol Spinney.
Yeah.
And
well, he's dead already, so.
Well, Jim, do we have any listener mail this week?
Oh, yeah, that's right. We're doing a show. We do. And as always, if you want to send us listener mail, you can email us at feedback@vaguelyscientific.com. You can comment on our blog. You can like us on Facebook. You can tweet @vaguelysci. And this email comes to us from Joyce and is in regards to episode 107, Fossilized Human Garbage. And Joyce writes, I saw a documentary a long time ago that said that things like the Hoover Dam and Mount Rushmore will likely last thousands of years after humans go extinct. I just thought that was interesting. Keep up the good work.
Probably the Great Wall of China is going to be around a while, too.
That's true. Yeah, that's big.
I mean, it's big. It's very big.
The Hoover Dam needs, constant maintenance, doesn't it?
I don't know.
Well, it doesn't have to be functional to last.
Right, yeah.
But it's also holding up,
right.
How many gallons of water?
Yeah. Although if the bottom sort of goes out from underneath it, then there could be a piece at the top as the water rushes out.
Yeah.
Or if we go extinct because of some kind of severe drought that, dries up Lake Mead. And I don't think Hoover Dam is Lake Mead, but you know where I'm going with this, I think.
Right.
Before humanity gets snuffed out, I'm going to make sure that we poke one hole in the Hoover Dam.
Perfect. That'll do it.
Just
maybe that's why humanity goes extinct, is you poked a hole in the Hoover Dam and it caused a cascade of climate failure.
It was a load-bearing structure for humanity.
Yeah.
For humanity.
There's a TV tropes page that I get a kick out of the name all the time. The trope is called Load-Bearing Boss. And it's for bosses in video games that after you beat them, the area self-destructs.
Oh.
So most of the bosses in Metroid games,
Yeah.
The Hoover Dam is a load-bearing boss for the humanity.
Boss.
Oh. Yeah. Herbert Hoover does not deserve to have monuments last past humanity.
I mean, you could have stopped with Herbert Hoover does not deserve monuments, and I would have been right there with you.
But he brought about a great time for the country.
It was certainly great. Can't argue that.
It was great. Yeah.
It certainly was.
I had to do a report on Herbert Hoover when I was in civics class in 9th grade, and the prompt was make a campaign for a historical president, as if they're running for like election. Like all the presidents have come back to life and they're running against each other.
Mm-hmm.
And mine was so tongue in cheek because I got Herbert Hoover. And so that was my tagline. He brought about a great era or something. And I think I got like 3rd place or something.
Hey, not bad.
Yeah.
It's better than Herbert Hoover did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he correct.
Well, thank you very much for that email, and if you have a question that needs to be answered in a vaguely scientific manner, please email us at questions@vaguelyscientific.com. If you want to get our episodes the minute that they're released, you can subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and all the other cool places that podcasts like to hang out. And subscribing and leaving feedback really helps us out, and so does telling your friends.
Yeah, and if you tell your friends, you can then talk to them about the things that we talked about.
Yeah, like Herbert Hoover.
Like Herbert Hoover.
Yeah. Our vaguely... I don't know what to say to that one. Our vaguely musical intro was composed by Anthony Pizzelli. And don't forget to check out our merch store over at vaguelyscientific.threadless.com. Not only does that help to support your favorite podcast, it also helps to support us too.
Yay! It might not help support your favorite podcast.
Yeah, that's why I said it as not a very good joke, I will admit. But
yeah. I thought it was a funny joke.
Good. I'm glad somebody appreciated it.
Well, thank you to Justin for being our guest this week.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. I just wanted you to know that I will be checking my bank account as soon as this is over to see if you've paid me.
It's going to be significantly lower.
I did give you my routing number, so
just a warning. Don't be surprised. For Vaguely Scientific, I am Derek.
I'm Jim.
I am definitely not Herbert Hoover.
Good.
And this is the navigator of the starship Pastrami signing off.
Toodaloo, everyone.
You know, this happens like every time. We sit down and we're like, we've done this for like an hour and a half.
I mean, there's probably plenty that can be cut. I just don't have a good idea of.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and listen through and see what can and should be cut. I don't think there's a should be in there, but there's gonna be like this has to be cut because otherwise it's a 2-hour episode.
Right.
Yeah. But I am not against releasing it
one.
as like a bonus episode of like us just talking about actual folklore.
I think the last time this happened to this extent, Derek and I started talking about magic.
Yeah, I think it was the episode where we talked about stage magic.
Yeah,
let's move on. I don't want to get into it. Let's move on.
God of stage magic.
Oh, Penn and Teller. Yeah, that's it.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I'm sorry, Lance Burton. He's the great. Anyway.